Welcome back, Science 9. Today we are going to continue Chapter 2.2, Technologies for Living in Space in Unit E, Space Exploration. Today's lesson is lesson number 3. We are going to learn about Spacesuit. Before we get things started, let's watch this video, Hazards of Human Space Flight. Hazard 1, Space Radiation. This video shows how space radiation affects human body. And it can be short-term, long-term, and so on. This will be played by our substitute teacher. You can play the video from YouTube. As you can see, the title is given. You can just copy and play. Alright, so let's talk about spacesuit. Spacesuits are specifically designed to keep astronauts alive in the vacuum of space. So one thing that I pointed out last time related to space station and spacesuit was spacesuit. One of the most important purpose is protection from hazard, but at the same time mimicking environment. I like to say Earth environment. You cannot generate gravitational force per se. However, you can still constrict our body so that our joint and our bone muscle will not separate from each other. Also, we need to supply necessary abiotic factors such as oxygen gas is a good example, and filter out carbon dioxide. We are going to go through that more in detail when we look at the movie Martian. Spacesuit provides multiple different abiotic factors to astronauts. One of the most important part, as you can see, is air, specifically oxygen gas, water, H2O liquid, when we need to supplement, heating and cooling. This is temperature control system. And our human body temperature around 36 to 37 degrees Celsius. And portable toilet. I want you to look at the diagram that is provided in your work booklet and what you can see from this PowerPoint slide. When it comes to few things, I'm going to highlight few: liquid cooling system and ventilation system. We need to understand that when it comes to ventilation, it is related to our exhaling and inhaling process. For instance, when it comes to concentration-wise, inhaling reduces oxygen gas content. Exhaling, on the other hand, increase the carbon dioxide concentration. So ventilation is required to make these two balanced. Fancy way of saying we are supplying oxygen and at the same time reduce carbon dioxide concentration. Helmet provided a visual sensory system and how we can communicate. So communication plays a huge role. Plus it blocks us, our retina in our eyes, from radiation by providing some filtration system. When it comes to life support subsystem from the back, we all know about what it provides, mostly gas and water, something like that. Provides you cooling umbilical cord. Batteries involved in there too. We also have secondary oxygen pack that go along with the primary support system. And when it comes to torso assembly and gloves, all of those are made by specific materials, which we're going to see it in the other video. If you think about living in space, we cannot get what we need. The biggest the most important supply that we cannot get is oxygen and water, which is essential to our body's equilibrium system. Because it is inefficient to constantly provide new material in the space station, most of them are recycled. The ISS uses devices that can recycle 100% of the water in station, and water filtration system involved from the ventilation of carbon dioxide, providing hydrogen from the separation of hydrogen and oxygen from water, and by undergoing that filtration and separation system, we can use water again. We can also use oxygen again. The environmental control and life support system abroad the ISS have a number of functions. One thing that I mentioned numerous times is recycling water to produce drinking water. Well, if you think about, a lot of people feel disgusted by this process, but let's think about our urine. Urine has a lot of water in there. Actually, depends on what you eat and so what you drink, if you will, and so on. But unless you're drinking coffee every day, something like that, most of the content is still water. From the water, we recover the water from the toilet. From this, we separate using electrical energy, something that we call electrolysis, which is a fancy way of saying water is separated into hydrogen and oxygen. I want you to write this down. The ratio of that is, however, it's 2-to-1 ratio. The reason it becomes 2-to-1 is because every water molecule needs one oxygen atom, which means whenever we reproduce water by separating the water into hydrogen and oxygen, you need to understand that if we have about 50 gram of hydrogen that produced, then we are going to have about 25 gram, something like that. It is about 2-to-1 ratio, about half of oxygen that we get. But long story short, after having this oxygen and hydrogen, we can recombine them together as water, or we can filter it with carbon dioxide and make methane gas as a exhaust, or methane gas as combustion of fuel. You can recycle those. But in any case, water filtration system make us to use water again. The second part I already explained, so I'm not going to elaborate too much. Recycled water will be used to produce oxygen. I mentioned about this electrolysis. This is important. If you didn't write it, please write down again. Liquid water turning into two elements, hydrogen gas, oxygen gas. The ratio of that is 2-to-1. Hydrogen is about 2, oxygen is about 1. Removing carbon dioxide from the air is very interesting. This is the one that I didn't go that detailed in previous one. We call saboteur system. So let's think about it. Humans exhale, and that produce carbon dioxide. Now, from the electrolysis, we know that hydrogen gas is produced and oxygen gas is produced, and the ratio was 2-to-1. What I want you to focus is actually these two, carbon dioxide and hydrogen. What saboteur system do is they separate carbon dioxide, carbon and oxygen. Oxygen will be used back as a life supply system. Oxygen for inhaling. Then what happened to carbon and hydrogen? Carbon and hydrogen will be combined and turning into methane gas. If you look at the ratio, it's about 1-to-2 ratio to produce one methane gas. This methane gas can be used as a excess fuel or discard into the space because it's combustible gas. Sometimes we filter microorganisms and dust from the air. But one thing that I want you to focus on is look at the picture at the bottom. A lot of people don't know about the significance of that, but this is lettuce. Lettuce was one of the first crop or vegetable that is grown in the space station. The one that you see around here is LED light that provides light for photosynthesis, and lettuce was grown. The thing about anything plant related, we need soil. That one, 100% sure. We also need water. Now, in previous slides, we learned about how water is reused. So I'm not going to explain about the water, but more about soil in this case. In order to grow something inside of the space or inside of any environment, we need soil and we need bacteria. I like to say decomposer. Decomposer, ladies and gentlemen, are the one that filter usable chemicals, like for instance nitrogen that is required for as a fertilizer from the fertilizer. Those are the ones that use to produce lettuce growth, if you will. So soil and bacteria is needed. Unnecessary microorganisms and dust are the ones that filter and go out into space, but nowadays these microorganisms can also recycle for sustaining life. Very similar process was used in the movie Martian by the main character to make potatoes. We also need to maintain abiotic factors such as air pressure, constant air pressure, and temperature, plus humidity level. These are abiotic factors that is required for all of the living creatures. In this case, astronauts, so humans, is what we need to know. So let's think about all of those recycling systems that our space station spacesuit does. When it comes to air, we cannot forget about the oxygen. Nitrogen are the one that is also high in air atmosphere, so we are controlling oxygen and nitrogen for the better breathing system, inhaling and exhaling. When it comes to waste product, which is like urine situation, we process urine and then we are gonna make water drinkable again, which is product of the water that can be used those or drinkable water. Some of the water is used for humidity control. Also talking about atmosphere components, carbon dioxide is something that we cannot forget. We exhale carbon dioxide, so we gotta remove those. Sometime in that process, hydrogen combined with carbon dioxide and produce methane gas, and then that's either used as a other extra combustible energy source or it will go out. Now at this point, we're gonna pause our lesson a little bit. We're gonna learn about spacesuit, how to build a spacesuit, what kind of stuff that is needed, what kind of material is required, those kind of things. So substitute teacher, please press the pause button. You can search this on YouTube. And ladies and gentlemen, that was our lesson. The homework is textbook page 425, number 1, all the way to number 8. And don't forget, Exit Lab will be done tomorrow. Will be held tomorrow. It will be mainly about chapter 2. We didn't go to chapter 2.3.